Welcome to Smash Avro Property. Today, I'm speaking with Joey DeGarda. He's a 26-year-old with 6 properties under his belt. Being content with his portfolio so far, he talks to us about his next move to upgrade his principal place of residence and what types of assets he's looking for to add to his portfolio in the future. Joey also talks to us about how he was able to save for a deposit on only a $45,000 income, all the while still studying full-time at uni, and how an investment-savvy mortgage broker has been a key player in the success of building his portfolio.
Look, I've danced around it at every kind of property purchase. I've got an amazing broker that does me wonders. And every time I try and get a loan, he just keeps saying no, but then he comes through with the goods. So it's a piece of advice for everyone: getting an investment-savvy mortgage broker on your side.
As always, seek your own professional financial, legal, and property investing advice for your current situation. Everything we talk about is just our opinion and general in nature and should never be considered as personal advice. So without any further ado, let's get house hunting with Joey. Joey DeGarda, welcome to Smash Avro Property.
Thanks, Jordan. Love to be on. Thanks for having me.
No, it's going to be a good one, this one. I've heard you on a podcast before, so I'm interested to delve into your story. So to get us started, what kind of inspired you to get into property investing?
For me, it started kind of when I was working through university. So I was working full-time, doing university full-time just after high school and saving a little bit of money, not much, earning probably $45,000, something like that on a full-time salary.
Wow.
And my old man just said that once you save up a little bit of money, we should potentially look at getting you an investment property so that it can grow in, say, 10 or 12 years, and then you can sell that as your deposit, and then that gain that you make will be the deposit on your family home, and then spend 30 years paying that mortgage off. So that was the kind of the origin for mine.
Yeah, that's great. So do you think your dad had a big influence on your decisions back then?
Yeah, look, I think he really did, but especially for that first one. From there, I've kind of rebelled against some of his advice, or maybe not rebelled, but yeah, he's kind of a little bit more slow down, calm down. I've just got much more of an appetite for risk where he really doesn't. So that's
right.
where I kind of veered away from him.
Just to give us some context, what were you studying at uni and what does your dad do for a living?
My dad's a conveyancer, so he kind of works in the property space.
Yeah.
But I studied a Bachelor of Applied Science and majored in exercise and sports science. So nothing really to do with property or anything like that.
Yeah, that's crazy. So he, so obviously the initial sort of drive came through. Obviously he saw the value in what property does and how it builds wealth. So it's good that he got you started. So, did you buy your first property when you were, how old were you when you bought your first property?
Yes, I was 21. I was still, I think I just finished uni. I had either just finished uni or I was still at uni. Bought my first property with the guidance of my old man and also my brother-in-law. They knew what they were doing. I didn't really know what I was doing. Just stumbled onto a good thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And did you buy the house together, all three of you?
No. So they were just giving me some guidance and some advice as to what I should be buying. But I was the sole owner, and it was just a 1-bedroom apartment in Maroubra here, just on a beachside suburb here in Sydney.
Oh, very nice. That's a good spot. My grandma lives there actually, so I'm a big fan of the area.
Yeah, no, really, really nice area.
And so were you saving most of your income throughout uni, or, how much of a deposit did you have, and were you being quite frugal with your money?
Yeah, look, I've always been that kind of character. For mine, I only really spend money on things that bring me kind of joy, and for me, it's really about travel. So I've been fortunate enough to go on kind of international holidays pretty frequently over the last, say, 7 or 8 years. But in saying that, I put away most of my pay, and the only thing I really pulled out money on, apart from everyday essentials, is for travel and property. So I was pretty frugal throughout uni, working full time, and I was able to get together. I think it was about $50,000. I only had to pay 5% deposit back in the day when lending was a little bit freer. So I was able to get in with the 5% deposit plus costs was somewhere around the $45,000 to $50,000 mark.
Yeah, that's awesome because we really just trade our time for experiences, right? That's all life's about. So it sounds like you know you got your head switched on, you know what you want to do in your life, and then you just make the right decisions to save up for those things and then enjoy it once you get there. So that whole delayed gratification piece.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I'm a massive believer in delayed gratification. I mean, I've got plenty of friends and peers and colleagues that love to go out twice, three times a week and spend hundreds each of those nights. Whereas I kind of pick and choose the occasions, and yeah, I'm all about trying to a phrase I heard about planting a seed and watering it, and that tree, let that tree grow, and that tree will provide you shade later on in life. So that kind of
Yeah,
delayed gratification piece really resonated well with me.
yeah, it was a big light bulb for me too when it came on. Like I was just like, oh, if you can just, and I apply it to everything now. Like if even with my goals and all that sort of stuff, it's not a a 2 week goal, it's a 3 month goal, and you really prolong it out to see the fruits of your labor. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it too. So apart from sort of saving for a deposit, what was the hardest part of getting started, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so backtracking there, 100%, it's the deposit saving that's the
Mm,
hardest piece,
mm.
and probably getting even harder now. Obviously, there's been a new legislation introduced as of January 1 for some first home buyers, but yeah, for the vast majority of people, it's still 10, if not 20% deposits that need to be saved, and that's the biggest barrier, and was the biggest barrier for me. But other than that, it was really being young and green and not really knowing what a suitable property is. And I see that every day with kind of people in our generation that even if they are ready to buy, it's what do we buy? What are we looking for? And they just sit on the sideline and a little bit of analysis paralysis and kind of not doing anything. And sometimes that's potentially even worse. So it was kind of, yeah, not really knowing what I was looking for. And I was fortunate enough to have some guidance from my old man and brother-in-law and kind of steering me towards the right kind of investment when I started.
Yeah, to have someone there when you're just getting started to give you that sort of mentorship is so essential. I mean, even on the other flip side of what you were saying there with analysis paralysis, they could even get sucked into a property spooker and be sold this sort of dream of an apartment off the plan or something like that, and not do so well out of it. And you know, the selling agent could tell them everything under the sun to try and convince them to buy it. I mean, I just interviewed a guy who bought an off the plan apartment, and it took him 3 years in construction when he thought it was going to take him 12 months. So, you know, there's some issues with going into that sort of that buy and he saw no growth on the property in those 3 years while he was renting as well. So it's kind of like a catch-22 really. And they just sort of either, as you say, get caught up in analysis paralysis and go to all these auctions and feel like they're getting outbid and can't handle, or not can't handle, but a bit overwhelmed with the whole process, or they get, you know, spooked into giving their money away to someone who's just taking it and running off with it. And then they're sort of left for a couple of months trying to figure out what they're going to do and where they're going to live. So, yeah, I think you're spot on with how our sort of generation sits with the property space. And I mean, moving forward now, how old are you now, and sort of what's your short and long-term goals for property investing?
So currently 26, and yeah, for me, it's kind of about now. I've got the portfolio to a position where I'm pretty happy with. Currently sitting at 6 properties, but looking to look. They're all apartments, so looking to trade one of them in, realize a bit of a gain, and then move into a family home. So keep 5 investment properties on the side, which I'm hoping is the long-term goal that will continue growing in value. So I've bought them in pretty good regions, well, most of them anyway. And then trade one of them in, realize a bit of a gain, and then kind of build the family home as a separate kind of entity. So I want 5 standalone on the side as investment, and then one of the investments now I'm going to try and trade in for, and then build my way up and progress
Yeah.
into a forever home.
Yeah, that's cool because that having that sort of tax-free capital growth on your principal place of residence is, you know, sometimes the only way people make money in property. And even if they've just got one property and that's one they sit on and have that capital growth over time, that's fantastic. So I think you're doing the right thing. I'm just curious about trading in a property. Is that because you've kind of hit your maximum borrowing capacity?
Yeah, look, I've danced around it at every kind of property purchase. I've got an amazing broker that that does me wonders. And every time I try and get a loan, he just keeps saying no, but then he comes through with the goods. So it's a piece of advice for everyone: getting an investment savvy mortgage broker on your side. But yeah, I've hit the threshold, and my sixth purchase. So the 5 that I bought beforehand were on my own, but the 6th one was with my partner, and that's our principal place of residence. So that's the one that we're going to try and trade in, realize a bit of a gain, and then work our way up to a forever home one day. But yeah, we know that that's not going to be tomorrow, but we're going to try and move from an apartment into like a little small cottage, and then work our way up into a house.
Yeah, that's cool. That sounds like a good plan. It's kind of the path my wife and I are on too. We've sort of got the little 2-bedroom sort of flat, and then sort of move our way up as we go, but get a couple of investment properties on the side too. So I think we're all in the same mindset. And the one you're trading in, is it because you guys bought it together, or is it because it's your worst performer, or is there like a specific reason that you want to trade that one in?
Because it's our principal place of residence, and it's the one that we bought together. Yeah. So that's the reason why. So we could, when we sell and the gain, we realize it will be not exempt so it'll be exempt from capital gains tax as being our principal place of residence.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So of the 5 others then, what kind of has been your most successful deal?
Either my first or 5th. The 5th being a little bit more, I've had a little bit more time in the market, and I've known a little bit more about what I was doing. So I think I bought that really well. But the first, I'm going to say was a bit of a fluke, but it was just it. Whether it's been the one that I've held for the longest, is that the reason why? Probably not. I just think it's probably located in the best position. It's seen, really phenomenal capital growth only in about 5 years' time. But it's due to its location that the first one's probably the number one, the one that I would never sell.
Yeah, it's interesting because I hear this question being asked a lot to other investors, and a lot of them do say, my first property was my biggest mistake. Like I didn't know a lot back then, but without that first property, they wouldn't have started that property investment journey anyway. And they've obviously done all right of it because, they've pulled some equity out and sort of used that to go into the second one. So it's an interesting question. And I'm glad you said it was your first one, because it's obviously like sort of really helped you out from the start.
Well, yeah. And I mean, if you can, unless you've bought an absolute dud of a property, I just think that with time, time generally heals all wounds. But yeah, if you can nail that first one, which again, I'm not going to say I did really well. And I mean, yes, I put study and research into and made sure, and it was a calculated decision, but part of it was, phenomenal timing just before the boom went and did what it did in 2016, 17.
Right.
But I mean, that really helped catapult me to the position that I'm at today. So I'll always be thankful for that first one. And whenever I drive past there, I look at it and go, "You ripper."
It's like your little baby, right? You drive past it. Just make sure it's okay. Make sure it's still standing. Everything looks good. The tenant's looking after it. And you're like, okay.
Pretty much.
It's all good now. And so are you in the same sort of area? Like, are you in that?
Yeah. I'm only 10 minutes away from that one.
And the rest of the properties, you said they were in regional areas. So did you sort of branch out and go for something different there?
No. So I think I said that they were in fairly good areas. So
right.
I've got what is it? 5? Yeah, 5 in Sydney, like in the metro area. Yeah. And then 1 on the Gold Coast. So that one, technically classified as regional, but as you know, the Gold Coast hardly regional, but technically, not being a capital city, it is a regional centre.
Yeah. And are you sort of now thinking, because you said you're not going to buy again? Yeah, that's right. But if you were to buy again, would you continue to diversify out, or are you still pretty keen on the Sydney market?
Yeah, look, I mean, I say I'm not actively looking to buy. I'm not actively looking to buy until I've kind of, my next priority is going to be the family home. And then once I've got that nailed, then I'll look to, I'm always going to look to continue to build the portfolio. So that's when I'm 100% really interested in, the other states outside of my own backyard. It's just that these opportunities have come up. A lot of them being ones that I can add value to cosmetically through a little bit of renovation. I don't mind I'm not great on the tools, but I don't mind getting my hands dirty and giving it a crack. Just to, if an opportunity comes up, something that I can 5 minutes away from where I live, I can go in and do a bit of a reno and see if I can realize some gain there. I'll jump on those opportunities. But yeah, to answer your question, moving forward, 100%, I'm looking at expanding the portfolio. Really excited about what's happening in Brisbane and even Adelaide to a certain degree.
Yeah, Brisbane's an interesting one. I mean, a lot of people have been talking about it for a while. I think it's probably been about 5 years or so. Everyone's like, Brisbane's coming up. Brisbane's
Got
coming
to
up.
do something.
It's got to pop eventually, surely.
Yeah, look, very much so. I mean, my best mate bought a house up there a few years ago. He's done pretty well out of it, but he's still waiting to see that day when it's gonna run. It's gonna have its time in the sun. Look, I think given the way how our other capital cities have just grown drastically, and it's the next biggest capital city, and it's still very, very, very much so affordable for your average income earner up there in Brisbane. So I just think that its time will come. When is it going to come? I don't know, but I hope that I'm in the market before it does run.
Yeah, well, it's all about that sort of job growth. I mean, everyone talks about the weather up there and how nice it is, and that's all well and good, but it's all about jobs and the economy over there as well. If there's a desire for people to live there, then I mean, surely eventually it's going to pop up. So yeah.
Well, even in and amongst my kind of network of friends, it's been bandied around a couple of times in that, look how affordable the houses are. If we can find ourselves some jobs up there, I know we don't have any family, but if we can start a friendship network or something up there, it might feel like home. And it's even been bandied around with us how unaffordable the Sydney house pricing is, that maybe we will just take that journey up to and settle in Brisbane. So it's really not kind of unspoken about. It's very much spoken about here in Sydney. So I think that, yeah, there will be a time when it will become not as popular, but it will become more popular than it is now.
Yeah, and given, Sydney and Melbourne traffic's of some sort, but definitely Sydney traffic, and how dense that sort of CBD is getting now. I mean, it was only so far we can go out before, it's 2 hour, 3 hour commute into the city every day for work, and it's just not acceptable. It's it's too long to travel. So it's going to be interesting to see sort of where the job growth does go and where that population sort of moves into. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. So when you're looking for a new investment property, do you have like an advisor or a mentor, or how do you sort of assess the investment potential of a property?
Yeah, look, for me, it kind of depends what your game plan is, both short term and long term. I always look at what the next property is going to be when I buy this one. So is it going to completely eat up all of my serviceability? What am I planning to do in the next 2 to 5 years in the investment space? And that kind of shapes the decision that I'll make for my next upcoming purchase. Kind of running my own little buyer's agency at the moment, I've been able to kind of guide and assist clients in building out their portfolios and guiding them through their journey. So I've kind of been given a little bit of a platform as to how to best shape building out a portfolio, both through my own experience and helping others. So I kind of take on a little bit of my own experience and seeing what's worked well through listening to podcasts, reading books, blogs, whatever else, and kind of educating myself that way, rather than going to an advisor per se, more that I'm an advisor for some of my clients. So I kind of think that, yeah, given the experience over the last 5 or 6 years, and I've been pretty happy with how the portfolio has performed, I've kind of just trusted my own instinct and gut. If I think a deal's a pretty good one, I'll try and move heaven and earth to get there. Again, I'm a little bit, if it's in my backyard and I think that there's some potential to add some improvement by way of cosmetic renovation, then I will, only because I've done it twice now and I've seen a pretty good increase in value from it. So that kind of learned experience has kind of given me the confidence to move forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love this transition. I mean, a big commonality I'm seeing between sort of the younger generation that have done really well in property is that they're all in the same boat, right? They probably have all of these friends that are like, oh, you've gotten 6 properties, teach us how to get into the property game. What do we need to do? How do we talk to a real estate agent, or how do we bid at auction? And it's kind of this natural flow into becoming a buyer's agent. And I think that's the best type of buyer's agent, because not only have you built up your own portfolio and experienced it firsthand, but as you say, you've invested so much into your education, and you're always listening what's going on the news and hearing recent trends. So you kind of know what's going in, and it's your passion and it's your vested interest interest. And I think, bringing that into this sort of new space of buyer's agents is fantastic.
Well, I mean, for when I first started, like if something like that, if I had have known, I mean, it wasn't really back in 2014, 15, it wasn't as big of a industry as it is today. And I mean, it's still obviously growing, but I mean, if I had have known that there was someone that I could speak to for guidance or something, I definitely would have reached out and spoken to them, even just helping clients by offering a free consultation just to give them some advice, and we don't end up buying anything for them. I really see the value, only because I wish that I kind of had someone in my corner when I first started, just to answer the questions that I would feel as though, is this a stupid question? Can I be asking that? Will I seem like I'm an easy target for the real estate agent? How many stories we hear about, as you mentioned earlier, people buying off the plan spruits to buy an agent. I mean, I've got a friend of mine, one of his close friends is bought off the plan, and by the time it came to settle, he had to fork out an extra $90,000 as it got valued in $90,000 less. It's just people that, and if you don't know what you're doing, I mean, you're not to blame. You're really not to blame. You just didn't know, and you don't know what you don't know. So if there's advice out there, take it.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm really hoping that this whole sort of buyer's agent industry sort of cuts that out a little bit, because as it becomes more and more common, I think it's going to be a necessity to go and see a buyer's agent whenever you're thinking about buying your first or your next property. And that'll sort of cut out this whole sort of spruiker, and hopefully bring in some more regulation into, sort of property investment advice in the first place.
Yeah. And if nothing else, I think it really just cuts out the kind of upper hand that the seller's agents think that they have, which they do have, over really green amateur buyers. So if you say, mate, I do this for a living, I know what I'm doing here. And then they just really can't kind of pull the wool over your eyes like they can when they've got someone who's pre-approved and doesn't really know what they're doing. They'll sell them whatever listings that they've got. So yeah, not really being affiliated with any seller's agents and really just working for a buyer really kind of gives the power back to the buyer in a world that's been really heavily dominated by the seller's agents.
Yeah, and it distills confidence back into them as well. Like they're kind of like, oh, I've got this guy on my side, he's going to help me out. And I think, I can't remember where I heard it, but someone said, really a buyer's agent is just pushing someone to say yes. Like it's a big decision. It's probably the biggest financial decision you'll ever make in your life, to finally go and buy that property. And if a buyer's agent does nothing more than say, yep, this is the one, go for gold 100%, then it just gives them that confidence to not get stuck in analysis paralysis.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
So a lot of people sort of have a bit of a conflict between capital growth and passive income. I mean,
I knew this question was coming.
I knew you've talked a little bit about manufacturing equity, but what kind of strategy do you sort of implement and lean towards?
Yeah, look, I really don't. I don't really subscribe to any of either capital growth nor cash flow one-sided. I see more of the value in what capital growth can do for you, particularly for our generation. I mean, we're young. I'm not saying that I'm going to quit work next year and live off $10 a week passive income that the property is generating. So I understand that I'm only 26, and I mean, our audience, hopefully that they're in the kind of same age bracket as us, and they kind of realize that they got some time ahead of them in the workforce, so that we've got time on our side to let the market increase in value. And I come back to my parents' place, which they bought for $90,000 in 1989 and now worth somewhere around the $2 million mark. It's just that kind of capital appreciation is just what gets me excited every day about this industry. So I kind of, if I had to lean one way, it'd probably be towards the capital growth, but yeah, you have to understand that you can't keep getting yourself into negative. Your cash flow can only run so far negative until there's a point when you have to go either stop or start buying something that's a little bit more neutral, if not positive. So even my portfolio overall, I'm pretty, there's a couple of properties that are negative, a couple that are neutral, and there's one that's heavily positive. So yeah, if I had to tilt one way, it'd be towards capital growth, but I understand that you need the cash flow to help sustain the portfolio. There's nothing worse than paying all this stamp duty, all these deposits, and then having to sell because your cash flow doesn't allow you to hold the properties and let capital appreciation do its thing over time.
Yeah, that's right. It's all about finding that balance, really. I mean, if you can't if you can't afford to hold all of these capital growth properties, then you're going to lose out because you have to sell one. And then, to sell costs 3% of the purchase price the sale price, and to get in costs 5%. So, it's a lot of money to get in and out of property. And if you can't afford to hold it, then you're losing out anyway. So I think you're spot on with kind of finding this mix between the two. And then, yeah, as I said before, sort of manufacturing equity. Sounds like you said you did 2 renos. So you're obviously implementing a few strategies there to try and, compensate for
Yeah,
which strategy to go for.
I kind of bought them knowing that they were good capital growth properties anyway. I just bought them really well, whether it was the market doing its thing or a bit of negotiation tactics and knowing a little bit about the seller's motivation. I bought them really well, and I knew that they would have been good capital growth properties in the long run anyway. And now after a little bit of renovation, the fact that I bought them so well, they're cash flow neutral as it is anyway. So, I mean, and we're in a really interesting time in the market where there is a fair bit of stock. Like even in Sydney here, you can find some stock. Like I only recently bought late last year, and what I bought is cash flow neutral, and it's 6.5 k's away from Sydney CBD.
Wow.
So it's not to say that if you want to buy neutral or positive, you need to be out in the sticks. And this is based on, say, a 90% lend as well. So, yeah, it's a really interesting time where there are opportunities kind of coming up everywhere. It's just about, making sure that we're kind of up to date and up to speed, and we've got the knowledge and the confidence behind us to make really informed decisions and act kind of swiftly when the right opportunity comes up.
Yeah, and if we're taking a long-term approach, as you said before, our target audience is kind of our generation and our age group, and we should really be thinking 30, 40, 50, 60-year game plan here. And eventually the property will be positively geared. It just depends on how long it's going to take. So although you might get caught up in, even if you can afford one negatively geared property, eventually that'll be positively geared because the rent increases over time, and your mortgage will hopefully stay the same if you don't pull out equity, and eventually be positively geared. And then it might be an opportunity for you to go again after that. So it's not really a be all end all, one way or the other. There's plenty of strategies. And as you say, it's that long-term play, and you've really got to be in for the long haul and plan your journey out.
And kind of backing up your argument there, in that I know it's often bandied around that you can't have both cash flow and capital growth, but exactly as you said there, sure, you might not have both from the beginning, but hey, after whether it's 10, 14, 16 years, you will have both. You will have phenomenal capital growth, and your property is now cash flow positive.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. So, I mean, talk us to a little bit about how you're managing your risks and what your kind of exit strategy might be.
I kind of manage my risks on the way into the property by buying in areas that I know will resell pretty easily. The kind of most remote property that I got being in the Gold Coast, where there's still plenty of stock that's turning over, and that's probably my riskiest per se, given that I think it would be the hardest one to sell. The rest that I've got are in Sydney Metro, so I don't think I'm going to have much trouble trying to sell it. And another one for the listeners is just always make sure that you've got a cash buffer. It's really kind of an easy thing to throw around, and it has to be really personal to yourself and your own portfolio, whether you've got 1, 2, 10, 30 properties. But just make sure that you got some cash there for a hot water system that blows, whatever that might come up. You need to always make sure that there is something left in the kitty, because again, the last thing you want to do, or even if you're out of work for a couple of weeks, you want to make sure that you've got some kind of fund you can fall back on, because the last thing you want to do is to be forced to sell a property. If you choose to sell because you think it's the right time and you've got other plans to leverage into other property, then sure. But the last thing you want to do is to be forced to sell, particularly when, it's really not what you want to be doing.
Yeah. And that reinforces what we were saying before. Like, it's so expensive to get in and out of property. And if you're sort of, even the economic conditions forced you to have to sell a property, you're going to miss out, because you have to, all these sale costs and all the buying costs, even if you paid LMI and stamp duty and all that, sort of goes out the window, because you have to force to sell and you lose out on any future growth that you might have had. And yeah, I think that's great advice. I've just gone from 3 months worth of expenses in my buffer to 6 months, and just having that comfortability to know that if, worst case scenario, if my wife or I were to lose my job or if something were to happen, we're still safe, and we can continue to hold the investment properties and actually take our time to decide what our best strategy is going to be moving forward. So I think that's perfect advice. So talk to us a little bit about any mistakes that you may have made around your property journey. I mean, it doesn't sound like you've made too many, but is there something that sort of caught you off guard, or that you would like to teach other people to try and watch out for?
Yeah, and it's regarding the same property as well. So it was property purchase number 2. Still not too knowledgeable in the space just yet, but I kind of realized a fair amount of equity from that first purchase in Maroubra, and I just went into the bank, and the bank said, "I will give you 110% to buy another property if you want." And they were going to take that first property as security. So cross-securitizing properties there would be one. And then also that purchase I wasn't particularly fond of. It was a purchase in Western Sydney here, and it was off a family friend. Look, I think at the time I bought it under market value, but given the market took a bit of a hit, it's only kind of just come back to where I bought it now. And look, it's not a bad property. The tenants have been there since 1996. So they've got no intentions of going anywhere, but I just can't help think that maybe there might be some opportunity cost more than anything else. So yeah, I wouldn't say a mistake, but definitely a lesson moving forward. And yeah, now I'm on a strategy with my broker about how we're working towards uncrossing those properties. So the rest of the properties I've been able to kind of avoid that cross securitization. I've always made sure that they're standalone. But yeah, we're working towards getting those ones uncrossed.
Yeah, that's a pretty common one, I think, in the industry, especially for the second or third is, and for people, the listeners that don't know what cross securitization is if you've already got a loan with a bank and then you want to buy a second property and you go back to the same bank, but you don't really prod and ask questions about how the loan is being structured. What they generally do is put the properties together on the same loan. And what that means is, if you were to sell one of the properties or try and get out in some format, you have to refinance one loan, and then because it's structured together, they're kind of stuck together. So it's a bit harder to get out and sort of move around, and you get kind of locked up into this one bank. And it's really common because most people sort of, start with a bank when they're 10 years old or whatever. They've got a little savings account, and then they go through them with everything throughout the whole process. And then as soon as they come to their first property, they go back to that bank and the second property. And then it's not till the third or fourth when they've really started to educate themselves a little bit more do they realize what's going on there. So that's a great one to sort of give out. I mean, is there a particular strategy that you're using with your broker? Is there an easy way to get out? Or are you kind of just trying to figure out the best way to do so?
No, it's not really an easy way to get out. Or there would have been an easy way to get out, but it would have potentially come at the expense of continuing to grow the portfolio. So I made the conscious decision of let's continue to build the portfolio. I'll manage the risk within those two properties. And then once we've kind of got the portfolio to a stage that we're comfortable at, then we'll go back and tackle the cross securitization. But yeah, we've been able to branch out to other banks now to continue to grow the portfolio. So we'll kind of take that as the next step now that the portfolio is sitting at a pretty steady level right now.
Yeah, that's good. And at least it's there, it's a risk, what you're doing with it, and how you're going to address it. So it's not really a huge risk, you know what's going on there, and then you can obviously solve it when you're ready.
Yeah, so, but just definitely a lesson for the listeners, just to make sure that we've just got as much as advice and education as you can get. Absolutely go and get it. Like, let us that have gone out make the mistakes, just as long as you guys learn from them, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast, really, is just I'm keen to hear the good, bad, and the ugly. Like, I want to hear all the horror stories, because without the horror stories, you don't learn, and you don't know what not to do. You're only just been told you can't lose in property because of all the success stories. So, exactly. I mean, on that sort of education piece, what sort of podcasts do you listen to, and have you got any books that have really helped you? I mean, what would you recommend as an education source?
Yeah, look, as we spoke briefly off the air before, I'm a podcast addict. So I'll listen to everything and anything to the point where I've hit every single Australian property podcast. So I'm now going abroad. I know that the policy, procedure, properties are all completely different, but just trying to get the fundamentals and try and listen to other people's stories about what they've done. So I'm branching out. I mean, I listen to obviously this fabulous podcast that I'm on now, SPI, the Property Couch, Property Investment. There's just so many to name, but that's kind of where I am now. But for what got me started was probably a classic that I'm sure most of your guests have come on and mentioned. It was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which goes against the capital growth versus cash flow, because he's very much all about the cash flow, but it just really gives you that grounded understanding about what property can do. I'll more take that approach as that's what's going to happen once these high growth properties are in a cash flow positive stage. And that's the kind of life that you can be living once we're there. And I mean, Kiyosaki only started when he was, I don't know how old he was, but he wasn't young. He must have been 40 or 50. And he kind of, just got to that stage really, really quickly in his life. But just adopting those fundamentals and principles and applying it to our Australian market. I think, it's a great book for beginners to go out there and sink their teeth into.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of things that sort of the fundamentals, learning the fundamentals is so essential. Even, really older books like, even
The Richest Man in Babylon?
Yeah, The Richest Man in Babylon, Steve McKnight, all those sort of things. I remember I read The Richest Man in Babylon once and I was kind of like, oh, this is no real value. Like, I didn't really get a whole lot over this. And then I was like, oh, actually, I'll go back. And I sort of went through those key sort of fundamental things. I was like, oh, there's so much insight in this when you really just stop and read the sentences and
or even once you've got more of an understanding and appreciation, when you go back and read it again after a few years, going, hang on, most of these lines are golden.
Yeah, 100%. I even have a reminder every year to go back and read it at Christmas time because you just forget about stuff all the time. You know what I mean? And it's a quick and easy one to get done, but there's so much value in it, so much gold in there.
But I just think we're fortunate enough that we're grown up in a generation where there is just so much and free information, so much free information at our fingertips. Why wouldn't we be trying to educate ourselves? I get that a lot of it's conflicting and it might get a little bit confusing, but what I always say is just listen to everything, read everything, absorb it all, and just pick and pull the parts that apply and resonate with you.
Yeah, and not only that, like it's hard to hide behind reviews and views and listens and all that sort of stuff these days. If there's someone on there that's saying, "Come on, mate," I think the game's up or whatever. You see a comment on a YouTube video, you might think, "Oh, maybe what they're selling is not really the best sort of thing." But if you see 100 people, like if you look at the Property Couches podcast and you see, I don't know how many reviews they've got, but it's well above mine. But they're all 5-star too, and obviously there's going to be some value in there that a lot of people also agree with. So it's although there's a lot of data out there and a lot of information out there, it's easy to identify what the good from the bad too.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And sifting through, the reviews, you can really get a feel, and pretty easily get a feel for, hey, these guys are pretty genuine.
Yeah, spot on. So talking about sort of these online resources and tools, I mean, what sort of online platforms do you use when you're sort of scoping out a property?
Most commonly RP data. So it really just gives a great insight if I'm focusing on a particular market, or even trying to hunt properties off market in the local area that I operate for here. Or if I'm buying properties interstate, it's a phenomenal tool that the everyday buyer might not have access to, again, which is why a great reason why you should be reaching out to professionals. On top of that, mate, I live on REA and on Domain. Until I fall asleep at night, the phone hits my face. Even if it's looking at properties that I'll never buy, I'm just looking at absolutely everything and anything for whatever reason. Sometimes no reason at all.
Yeah, well, if that's not true passion, then I don't know what is. So, I mean, what motivates you? What gets you up in the morning?
For me, it's about what property investment can do. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know if we're working off past performance. And again, I harp back to my parents' principal place of residence. Like that's what excites me. the scope and the capacity for what this field can do for everyone, and how achievable it is. I'm not saying everyone's going to go out there and buy 4 properties, but how achievable it is to get started. And then once you're started, you'll really realize that, hey, this wasn't so bad. And then it's not about what's going to happen today or tomorrow. I just keep waking up going, in 20 years time, this is going to be something pretty special.
Awesome. And that's all it is really, is just sort of seeing the history and how well it's done and how well it's performed, and getting excited about trying to replicate those same results. And although it's a very different market to what it was for our parents and our grandparents, there's still so much potential. The forecasting population growth to be, 40,000 by 2030, or I don't know the exact date, but it's set to double. And so if there's that much population growth, where's everyone going to live? And let's take advantage of that while we can.
Well, yeah, and it's said 1,000 times, it's the only asset class that we live in. I mean, investing in shares, it's got its place. But for me, I don't really know much about the Like, if I can't tell you who everyone in the board of that company is, then I don't really feel as though I should be investing my money there. And unless you go and get some index funds or whatever else, then sure. But for mine, I feel like I'm still working. So my super is investing in shares. I've put professionals to work. They're doing their thing. I'll work on what I know, what I can touch and feel, and what I can potentially add value to myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. It goes back to sort of the old Warren Buffett quote, like he only invests in things that he knows. Like he doesn't invest in tech companies because he doesn't understand tech companies. He only invests in things that he understands and thoroughly reads and, knows all the intricacies of the business. And I think the same applies to property. Don't invest, even if you're investing interstate. Like I would never invest interstate unless I approached a buyer's agent, because I honestly have no idea, apart from Sydney because I grew up in Sydney, and Melbourne because I live in Melbourne. But if I was to buy in Brisbane or anything like that, I would have no idea of where to buy, what to buy, and how to buy. So, if you don't have the knowledge or experience, or can't get your foot on the ground down there, outsource and invest in someone who does have that knowledge and experience. And just finally, what advice would you give our generation to get started?
Take action. If you're anywhere near in a position, if you think you might be in a position in a year's time, go and get started. I mean, a conversation with a mortgage broker costs you absolutely nothing. A conversation with most buyers agents will cost you absolutely nothing. Just go and have a conversation, figure out what your borrowing capacity could be, and have a chat about what you think you might want to do in terms of building out a portfolio. If it's even a thing for you, it's not for everyone. It might not be for you, but if there's somewhat of a desire or a passion, go and take action. We're young, fit and healthy. We live in the best country in the world at probably the best time ever. There's just so many opportunities out there. If there's half an opportunity, grab it with both hands. Whether it's picking up a side hustle, a third job, a fourth job, go out there and make the most of the day, because you're not going to get it again, and work as hard as you can now to kind of provide for yourself later on in life.
That's spot on. That's perfect advice. I mean, everything that's happened in the past has already happened. Everything that's going to happen in the future, we can't do. All we can do is what we can do right now. So if all you can do right now is pick up the phone and call a mortgage broker just to take some action, then that's going to lead you on the path to your future being what you want to be doing and buying the next property. Well, Joey, it's been a great conversation, mate. It's actually been really interesting to sort of get to know you and your philosophy and how you got started. And I really appreciate you coming on, mate.
No, it's been wonderful. Thanks so much for having me, Jordan. Really appreciate the chat.
I loved Joey's approach to the capital growth or passive income conundrum, balancing out his portfolio until eventually all of his properties become cash flow positive, opening up his borrowing capacity to go again and keep adding to the portfolio. I'm always looking for more guests to come onto the show. If you're under 30 and have one or more investment properties, whether it's good, bad or ugly, I would love to talk to you about it. The main focus is to help other soon-to-be young investors with tips and tricks along the journey. Learn from the mistakes that we have made and ignite the fire to set themselves up financially for the rest of their lives. If you're interested in sharing your story, you can go to jordandeyong.com/podcasts, where there's a podcast inquiry button at the top that will guide you through the next steps. If you're keen for more content like this, make sure you subscribe and please leave us a review with any feedback for future podcasts. And until next time, happy house hunting.